In the bright and noisy city of Accra, Tarila was always the responsible one, the sister who carried everyone's weight without complaining. She worked 2 jobs, one at a busy restaurant during the day and another cleaning offices at night. Every paycheck, every tired morning, every skipped meal was for one reason: to help her younger sister Imaid have the life she dreamed of. When Imaid got engaged, the whole family buzzed with excitement. The groom's family was rich, loud, and demanding. They wanted a luxurious wedding, a hotel ballroom, gold decor, imported flowers, and a 5-course meal. Imaid was thrilled but worried about the cost. That's when Tarila stepped in, smiling softly. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." Without hesitation, she transferred $55,000, money she had been saving for years to start her own event planning business. It was her dream, her way out of endless work and exhaustion. But she told herself, family first. My time will come later. When the payments went through, everyone praised her generosity. Aunties called her an angel, and even the groom's father shook her hand, saying, "You're a rare kind of sister." But as the wedding plans grew bigger, something between the sisters began to shift. Imaid stopped calling as often. Her messages turned short and cold. One evening, when Tarila dropped by to help with the wedding dress fitting, Imaid looked uncomfortable. "You don't have to come to every appointment," she said quietly. It stung, like a tiny crack forming in something once whole. Tarila smiled through it, pretending not to notice. Deep down, though, she felt something heavy in her chest. She had given up everything for her sister's happiness. But for the first time, she wondered if that sacrifice would cost her more than just money. As the wedding day drew closer, the house buzzed with excitement. Deliveries, phone calls, fittings, and endless chatter about the big day. Everyone seemed busy except Tarila. She noticed she wasn't being called to meetings anymore. Her opinions weren't asked, and her name was missing from the family group chats about the guest list and seating plans. First, she thought it was just a mistake. But when it happened again, the uneasiness in her heart began to grow. One evening, she walked into the living room where Imaid and the wedding planner were finalizing the seating chart. She leaned over to look and froze. Her name wasn't there. She smiled awkwardly and asked, "Hey, maybe you just forgot me?" Imaid looked up, fidgeting with her pen. "Oh no, you're on the list, just not in that section. Don't worry about it." The words didn't sit right. Later that week, during the final dress fitting, Tarila mentioned she'd found a beautiful blue gown she wanted to wear for the wedding. Imaid's face tightened. Maybe wear something simpler," she said softly. "You know, I don't want too much attention on anyone else." Tarila blinked, confused. "Imaid, it's your wedding. Why would anyone be looking at me?" Imaid gave a small, nervous laugh but didn't answer. Madame Ogoma, the groom's mother, who had been sitting nearby sipping tea, looked up with a slow, smug smile. "Yes, my dear," she said smoothly. "Let your sister wear something modest. After all, we want the family image to be elegant." The tone was polite, but the look in her eyes wasn't. It carried quiet judgment, the kind that stings deeper than words. Tarila tried to laugh it off, saying she didn't mind. But as she walked home that evening, the truth pressed against her chest. Something had changed. The closeness she and Imaid once shared, the laughter, the late-night talks, the promises, were fading like a picture left too long in the sun. The next day, she overheard a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. One of the cousins whispered, "I heard Madame Ogoma said Tarila's too ordinary for the guest list. She doesn't fit the family image." The words burned. That night, Tarila sat by her window, looking at the city lights of Accra. She had paid for almost everything, yet somehow she was being made to feel like an outsider, like her presence was something to hide. Still she said nothing. She told herself it's Imaid's day. Just smile and let her shine. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was being planned behind that polite smile of Madame Ogoma's, and that this wedding might not be the fairy tale she sacrificed everything for. The wedding morning was bright and beautiful, the kind of day that felt like a blessing. The sky was clear, music filled the air, and guests arrived in sparkling cars dressed in their best. Tarila took a deep breath as she stood before her mirror. Her elegant blue gown shimmered softly under the light, simple but graceful, just like her. She smiled at her reflection, whispering, "Today is a maid's big day." Despite everything, her heart was full of love and pride for her sister. She arrived at the grand hotel where the wedding was being held, carrying a small gift bag and her invitation in hand. But before she could walk in, 2 security guards stepped in front of her. "Excuse me, ma'am," one said, flipping through a clipboard. "Can we have your name?" "Tarila," she replied, smiling politely. "I'm the bride's sister." The guard looked again, then frowned. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your name isn't on the guest list." At first, she laughed, thinking it was a silly mistake. "Oh, maybe it's under the family section," she said, pointing to the ballroom doors where people were being welcomed in. But the guard shook his head. "No, ma'am. You're not listed anywhere." Confused, she stepped aside and called her sister. No answer. She tried again, still nothing. A few guests started noticing the scene. Someone whispered, "Isn't that the bride's sister?" Cameras flashed, people stared. Finally, one of the planners walked over, whispering nervously, "Tarila, I'm so sorry, but the bride said you weren't supposed to be on the list. She wanted a smaller group for photos. Just the core family." The words hit her like a slap. "Core family," she repeated quietly. "I paid for this wedding." Her voice trembled, but no one met her eyes. Then she saw them, Imaid and Madame Ogoma standing by the entrance. Imaid looked stunning in her gown, glowing under the cameras. For a second, Tarila's heart softened, until Imaid turned her head away, pretending not to see her. A cold realization spread through Tarila's body. This wasn't a mistake. Her own sister had removed her from the guest list to keep the family image clean, as the planner had put it. Someone nearby whispered, "She was uninvited." Others took photos, phones lighting up like stars. Tarila stood frozen, her hands shaking as she clutched the small gift she had brought, a gold bracelet engraved with "Sisters Forever." With tears stinging her eyes, she took one last look at her sister laughing beside her new in-laws. The same people who made her feel like she didn't belong. And as she turned and walked away from the venue, heels clicking against the pavement, the whispers followed her like echoes. The sister who paid for everything, but wasn't good enough to attend. Tarila stood near the hotel garden, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. She could still hear the laughter, the music, the clinking glasses from the ballroom where her sister's wedding was in full swing. Without her, she had given her savings, her time, her love, everything, and now she stood outside like a stranger. As she wiped her tears and tried to catch her breath, a familiar perfume drifted by. Madame Ogoma's sharp voice followed. "Ah, there you are," she said smoothly, her tone dripping with satisfaction. Tarila turned, and there she was, the groom's mother, dressed in gold lace, a sly smile curling on her lips. "You really thought you belonged in our circle?" Madame Ogoma asked, her eyes scanning Tarila from head to toe. "You're a sweet girl, but this wedding is not your place. We can't have unnecessary faces ruining our family image." Tarila's lips trembled. "I paid for this wedding," she said softly, barely able to keep her voice steady. "Everything you're enjoying inside, I made it happen." Madame Ogoma gave a low laugh, the kind that cuts deeper than shouting. "Yes, and we're grateful. But money doesn't buy class, my dear. Some people are meant to serve, not sit at the table." For a moment, everything went silent. The music, the crowd, the noise, it all faded. Tarila could only hear her heart breaking. She wanted to scream, to ask why, but her throat felt tight. Just then, Imaid stepped out from the hall, her veil lifted slightly. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, Tarila thought her sister would run to her, that maybe she hadn't known. But Imaid froze. She looked at Madame Ogoma, then quickly looked away. "You told her to do this," Tarila whispered, tears spilling down her face. "Didn't you?" Madame Ogoma tilted her head, smiling coldly. "I didn't tell her anything she didn't already believe. She knows what's best for her new family." Imaid stood silently behind her new mother-in-law, eyes glistening, face pale. She didn't say a word. That silence said everything. Tarila felt her legs shake, but she straightened herself. "I hope this new family gives you the peace you threw me away for," she said, voice cracking. Then she turned, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she walked away, trembling but refusing to let them see her fall apart. Behind her, the laughter from the hall grew louder, but for Imaid it sounded hollow, and as Madame Ogoma smiled proudly, the camera lights flashed on a wedding built on lies, betrayal, and a sister's broken heart. That night, Accra's city lights glowed softly outside Tarila's small apartment, but inside it was dark and quiet. She sat on the edge of her bed, still wearing the same blue dress from earlier. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes swollen from crying, and her phone lay silent beside her. The image of Imaid looking away, pretending not to know her, kept replaying in her head. Every memory, every sacrifice now felt like a cruel joke. Then suddenly her phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed across the screen. She hesitated but answered in a tired voice. "Hello. Good evening, Miss Tarila," the caller said politely. "This is the venue manager from Golden Crest Events. We just wanted to confirm something. The $55,000 payment for the wedding is still listed under your name. We need your approval for tomorrow's continuation and the final vendor clearances." For a moment, Tarila didn't respond. She sat completely still, her mind spinning. "The payment is in my name," she thought. "They erased me from the wedding, but they didn't even bother to remove me from the bills." Her chest tightened, not from pain this time, but from something colder, realization. They had used her. They took her money, her kindness, her loyalty, and threw her out like she was nothing. Her voice came out calm, almost too calm. "Thank you for calling," she said softly. "Actually, I'll be handling all payment authorizations personally from now on. I'd like to cancel any contracts that have my signature on them." The manager sounded surprised. "Ma'am, that would include the caterer, the florist, the decorators, and the band. Are you sure?" "Yes," she said firmly. "Cancel them all. Immediately." She hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time. The pain was still there, but something new began to rise in her. Quiet power. For once, she wasn't crying or begging. She wasn't explaining herself to anyone. Instead, she opened her laptop and went through every receipt, every payment slip. Each one had her name, her signature, her sacrifice written all over it. And now she was taking it all back. By midnight, the calls started coming in. The caterer couldn't proceed without confirmation. The decorator refused to continue without authorization. Panic was beginning to spread, but not in her home. Tarila finally exhaled, whispering to herself, "You erased me from your guest list, but you forgot one thing. I was the one who paid for the party." For the first time in weeks, she smiled. It wasn't a smile of revenge. It was the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had finally remembered her own worth and was done letting others write her story. The next morning, the wedding venue buzzed with early excitement. Guests in glittering outfits arrived, photographers lined the red carpet, and everything looked perfect, at least on the outside. The sun was bright, the flowers glistened, and the music speakers stood tall, waiting to play. But behind the smiles and flashing cameras, something was very, very wrong. The first sign came from the kitchen. The head caterer stormed out, waving papers. "We can't serve anything without payment clearance," he shouted. The wedding planner froze. "What do you mean? Everything was settled yesterday." "No," the caterer said sharply. "The person who paid, Miss Tarila, withdrew the authorization. No payment, no service." Within minutes, the news spread like wildfire. The florists packed up their trucks, the decorators refused to hang the final banners, and the band quietly unplugged their instruments. The venue staff looked helpless as chaos unfolded right before the guests' eyes. Imaid was in her bridal suite, getting her makeup done, when her maid of honor rushed in, panicking. "Imaid, the food's not coming. The flowers, they're taking them away." "What?" Imaid cried, jumping up. "That's impossible. Call the planner. Call anyone." Downstairs, guests were murmuring. "What's going on? Why are they removing the cake? Did the bride's family go broke?" Phones came out instantly. Videos started recording, and whispers turned into full-blown chatter online. Madame Ogoma came storming out of the ballroom, her expensive head wrap tilted slightly from anger. "Who is responsible for this embarrassment?" she yelled. Someone fix this now. The planner tried to explain. Madam, we can't. The original payer, Tarila, cancelled everything. The funds were under her name. The room went silent. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Cameras flashed, people gasped, and Madame Ogoma's face turned pale. That girl did this, she hissed. A maid came running down the stairs in her white gown, tears streaming down her face. Mum, what's happening? Before anyone could stop her, a guest shouted. It's all over social media. Someone posted that the sister who paid for everything was kicked out yesterday. The hall erupted. Guests pulled out their phones, recording, gossiping, live-streaming the disaster as it unfolded. The band left. The caterers drove off. The once grand wedding was collapsing, live in real time. A maid sank to the floor, crying, her perfect makeup ruined. What have I done? She whispered. But Madame Ogoma stood stiffly beside her, fuming, refusing to take any blame. And outside, as cameras flashed and chaos raged, the story of the wedding that cancelled itself spread across the internet, turning a day meant for love and pride into a viral storm of humiliation and regret. The ballroom was in total chaos. Guests whispered, planners argued, and staff ran around helplessly trying to fix the disaster. The once beautiful decorations were half taken down, the food tables stood empty, and the band's stage was dark. A maid sat in her wedding gown, sobbing quietly, her veil crumpled in her lap. Madame Ogoma paced angrily, barking orders at everyone but refusing to face what was really happening. Then, all of a sudden, the big LED screen behind the main stage flickered to life. At first, people thought it was a glitch or part of the wedding program restarting. But then bold white letters appeared on the black screen. Event payment authorization. Tarila Mensa. The room froze. A document scrolled down automatically, showing the contracts, invoices, and bank transfers, all under Tarila's name. Caterer, paid by Tarila. Florist, paid by Tarila. Venue deposit, paid by Tarila. Every single vendor, every single dollar. Gasps filled the hall. Someone dropped a glass. A few guests covered their mouths in shock. The wealthy groom's family, who had bragged for weeks about sponsoring a royal wedding, now stood frozen, speechless. What is this? A maid stammered, her voice trembling. She turned to the planner, who looked terrified. Who put that up there? The planner shook her head. I don't know, madam. The screen system was linked to the event drive. Maybe someone sent a live file from the main server. But everyone knew exactly who it was. The only person who had those receipts. Tarila. The crowd began to murmur louder. Wait, she's the one who paid. You mean her sister funded everything? And they kicked her out? Phones came out instantly. Guests started recording the screen, snapping photos of the documents. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, live updates spreading faster than the music that was supposed to play that morning. Madame Ogoma's face turned ashen. She tried to keep her composure, but people were already whispering about her manipulation, her arrogance, her lies. The reputation she had guarded so fiercely was falling apart right in front of her. A maid stood there, trembling, as the truth hit her like a storm. Her sister had paid for it all. Every flower, every plate, every sparkle in the room, all from the savings Tarila had sacrificed. And in return, she had been humiliated and erased. As the guests' murmurs turned into judgmental stares, a maid broke down completely. What have I done? She cried, covering her face. On the big screen, the final line of the document appeared in bold. Authorized by Tarila Mensa, sole financial sponsor. The room fell silent again. No one knew what to say. And somewhere across town, Tarila sat quietly on her couch, watching the chaos unfold on her phone. She didn't smile or gloat. She just whispered softly to herself, now they see. 2 days after the disastrous wedding, the story had exploded across every social media platform in Accra and beyond. Clips of a maid sobbing, the empty food tables, and the big screen revealing Tarila as the true funder were trending everywhere. Hashtags like #weddingfail and #sisterwhopaid were all over Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Everyone seemed to know what had happened. Friends, relatives, even strangers commenting on the arrogance of the groom's family and the betrayal of a sister. Madame Ogoma and her family were facing public embarrassment unlike anything they had imagined. Friends stopped calling, relatives whispered behind their backs, and even the media picked up the story. Articles appeared online mocking the so-called perfect wedding that collapsed because of greed and manipulation. Madame Ogoma's proud smile was gone, replaced by tight lips and flushed cheeks every time someone mentioned the viral scandal. Meanwhile, Imaid tried everything to reach Tarila. She called her phone repeatedly, left voicemails, sent messages, even asked mutual friends to talk to her. But Tarila didn't respond. Every time Imaid reached out, she remained silent. That silence cut deeper than any argument. It was a quiet punishment, a message louder than words could ever be. Tarila, on the other hand, was far from idle. Sitting in her small apartment, she opened her laptop and began planning her new life. The refunded $55,000 was already in her account, and now, with the viral attention she had gained, she saw an opportunity. She decided to start her own event company, one that would focus on honesty, creativity, and celebrating people for who they truly were, not for appearances. She registered the business under her name, designed a sleek logo, and created social media pages that immediately attracted followers curious about the sister who had paid for a wedding but was cut out of it. Her story spread like wildfire, and inquiries for events poured in from people who wanted her expertise and integrity. For the first time in weeks, Tarila felt a sense of peace. She had been hurt, humiliated, and erased, but she had also gained recognition, freedom, and control over her own life. As she arranged her first bookings and planned her first client's event, she whispered to herself, "I built this not for revenge but for me. And this time, no one can take it away." In the quiet moments of that night, while the Ogoma family faced endless ridicule, Tarila smiled softly. She had turned betrayal into opportunity, humiliation into empowerment, and though she had been erased from her sister's wedding, the world now knew her worth, and she was just getting started. A few weeks later, there was a soft knock on Tarila's office door. She looked up from her laptop, surprised. Standing there was a maid, dressed simply, her makeup minimal, and her eyes red from crying. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt heavy, charged with months of pain, anger, and silence. I need to say something," Imaid began, her voice trembling. "I let them turn me against you. Madame Ogoma, the family. They made me believe you were trying to embarrass me, that you wanted to ruin my wedding. No. I believed it." She took a shaky breath, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Tarila. I never meant to hurt you." Tarila watched her sister, her chest tight with old hurt and fresh anger. Every word Imaid spoke brought back memories. The countless hours she worked 2 jobs, the sleepless nights saving money for the wedding, the humiliation of being erased from the guest list, and the viral disaster that followed. She wanted to scream, to shout, to tell Imaid how deeply she had been betrayed. But instead she stayed quiet. She let the words hang in the air, heavy and true. There was no need for dramatic confrontations. Silence carried more weight than any argument ever could. Imaid took another step closer, reaching out her hand. "Please, can we just start over? Can you forgive me?" Tarila looked at her sister, the hurt still sharp but tempered with strength. She shook her head gently, not out of anger, but to teach a lesson far greater than any apology. Loyalty, she realized, wasn't about sharing blood or being family. Loyalty was respect, and respect had been broken, not just by Imaid, but by those who manipulated her. Imaid nodded, understanding more in that silence than words could convey. She lowered her gaze, tears still falling. I see that now," she whispered. Tarila turned back to her laptop, letting the moment pass. She had built her life from scratch, from humiliation to empowerment, and no apology could erase the lessons she had learned. Imaid stayed for a moment longer, then quietly left, leaving the door open but the distance still measured. Tarila exhaled slowly, feeling the calm settle over her. The hurt was still there, but so was her strength. She had survived betrayal, turned it into opportunity, and learned something deeper than family ties. Loyalty isn't blood, it's respect. And from now on she would never allow anyone, not even her own sister, to take that from her again. Months later, Tarila stood in the middle of a beautifully decorated hall, sunlight streaming through the tall windows. The room was alive with laughter, music, and the excited chatter of children dressed in tiny tuxedos and flower girl dresses. This was no ordinary wedding. It was a charity wedding for orphans, a dream she had carried in her heart ever since she began her event company. Every detail had been planned with love. The flowers were fresh and bright, the tables adorned with handmade decorations, and the food catered to bring joy rather than impress anyone. There were no rich relatives judging, no hidden agendas, no one trying to steal the spotlight, just pure celebration. As the children walked down the aisle, holding hands and smiling nervously, cameras from local media and social media volunteers rolled, capturing every moment. Tarila stood quietly at the front, watching them, feeling a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in months. This was her gift, not just her money but her time, her effort, her heart. When everything was ready, she stepped forward to address the crowd. Her voice was soft but steady, carrying across the room. "You can blacklist me from your guest list," she said, her eyes glistening, "but you can't erase my kindness." The room erupted into applause, not the fake kind that comes from obligation, but genuine admiration. People cheered, some wiping tears from their eyes. The children laughed, the volunteers smiled, and for the first time in a long time, Tarila felt truly seen. This wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about her own strength, her own values, and the way she chose to live her life. She realized that true respect and recognition come from what you do, not what people try to take from you. As she looked around, she saw the joy on the children's faces, the gratitude in the volunteers' eyes, and she smiled softly. For once, the story wasn't about betrayal or hurt. It was about love, generosity, and triumph. She had turned pain into purpose, humiliation into hope, and the world celebrated her for who she truly was. In that moment, surrounded by laughter, light, and love, Tarila knew she had come full circle.